you know, you pick an inconspicuous week, and it's like, I got to go to the office. So I go, I'm like, it's Monday through Wednesday. Nothing's going to happen. And then literally the bottom falls out of Microsoft on the news bucket for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
Just all hits the table.
I'm trying not to exaggerate this, and I've done a lot of, just searching my memory and looking at things, and I think this might be the momentous news week in the history of Microsoft in some ways. I mean, obviously Microsoft sued by the federal government is pretty big. Microsoft to be broken up by a judge it's pretty big.
Yeah.
But as far as it
was just like repetitive hits.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then there's another one even today.
I know. It's like a rocket movie.
Let's start with Monday because whatever. So on Monday we learn that Panos Panay is left. I think left is a better way to describe it. Has left Microsoft. He's apparently going to Amazon to run Alexa hardware.
That one is apparently not clear, by the way. That's another thing that's kind of changed. But yeah, but it likely may be going to Amazon. Yeah.
So let me just run through my ramble. And I want to get your opinion on this because so we don't know the exact terms of Panos leaving. Was he asked to leave? Was he told to leave? Was he unhappy? Did he look at the roadmap? Mm-hmm. He was unhappy with what he was doing. Was he told to put more ads in Windows? He's like, I don't want to do that. We don't really know. But what we do know is that he's gone, right? Panos Panay has left. Windows is back into what I kind of in my brain refer to as that post Terry Myerson era where Windows doesn't have a centralized leader face of the brand anymore.
And that's actually even weirder than you think, but we'll get to that.
So Yusuf Mehdi is like
That's
current.
The thing. It's not. He's actually not. So we'll get there. But go on. I'm sorry.
Yusuf Mehdi is like running part of it, but then there's other people running the more technical aspect. Right. The other things we don't currently know, and I'm putting this in a nutshell, is Windows off the senior leadership team again? Right. That was one of the things that Panos apparently brought back was that when he was assigned that he was back at Windows was back at the table. And as a reminder to everybody who may have forgot, when you don't have a seat at the senior leadership table, you get that weird Windows 10 era where just like nothing happened. So that's my 5-second wrap up of the most cataclysmic thing to happen to Windows.
No, I mean 100%. I had the same exact reaction that you did. I'm pasting in something. I got this kind of letter from Microsoft or whatever, which I believe was delivered internally first and then given to people. I don't know. And sorry, I'm reading this now and I'm like, this doesn't even read as English, but okay. So lots of confusion here. To your first point, which was what, we talked about this in Windows Weekly. Was he pushed or did he jump? I mean, the things we do know. Well, no, we don't know anything. So we believe in the past that he either was sought by or sought after going to Apple. I have a belief that part of the reason he controlled what was given Windows was as a reward to not do that. He is obviously a forward-moving, person, aggressive, whatever, and wanted more power. We have our suspicions about why this is happening and why it happened when it happened, right? And then we hear things, right? We've heard since then. This occurred since this, but there were rumors, there were stories that Microsoft, a lot of jobs. I've heard directly from employees that Windows was gutted back in March. A lot of heard from a lot of people. I'm trying to remember the word. There's a lot of despair over there, I think is the way to put it. But that he really pushed back against this. They forced him to cut models of the Surface products coming down the pike, and fewer people, fewer resources, whatever. And supposedly that pissed off people, and he got pushed out. But then again, more recently in a news report, I've heard that some of that stuff, right? But that he left because of those things. That he was like, this is just unacceptable. Whatever. My suspicion, and this hasn't changed so far based on what's come in, and I know I'm going to learn more over time, but is that Microsoft's doing a little AI reorg this year, right? This started in November last year, roughly, when the talk started happening internally over the OpenAI advances with GPT-4 or whatever it's called, ChatGPT-4, and how much of an advance that was. And oh my God, here we go, we're going to do this. And publicly, you've seen that stuff in the Bing thing from February, the Microsoft 365 and all the Copilots and all the vision on AI. And I think what we're seeing now is the realization of a part of the realization of a reorg that was actually foisted a long time ago, but is now, because he is gone, is being made public. And I think what was going to happen, this is my suspicion, is the old way that Windows was organized as under more personal computing, the way that really the whole company is organized, has changing because of AI. And in this new organization, Windows would be further diminished. And I mean, Windows, remember, used to be a top-level business at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Then it became part of more personal computing. I'm making it simple here, but it was and is the biggest part of that business right now by revenue. I'm guessing it won't be soon. And that actually might be Xbox, right? This is by revenue. It's not profits, but it's by revenue. I believe, and this is the part we have to kind of parse here, that under this new organization, Windows is down yet another level further. Your comment about the senior leadership team is a good one. It's not very clear that anyone in this model will be promoted to that bit, right? But if you look, it's just so weird because we really don't know the exact set of, or the exact makeup of the Microsoft's business, right?
Yep.
But within more personal computing, there is something called the Experiences and Devices Group. It is led by Rajesh Jha, who is a executive vice president at Microsoft, right? Because there are multiple levels of these guys now. He was the guy that sort of ran Windows after Terry Myerson left. But to your point, there was no one really directly responsible for Windows. And there was no, Rajesh was not, and to my knowledge is not now on the senior leadership team. So there was no representation for that business in the senior leadership, which we identified as a huge problem back then, right? So Rajesh continues. And that guy has been a weird continuum. He's usually in the background. He actually has appeared on stage. We've seen him. He's soft-spoken, not particularly dynamic, whatever. But he's there. He's always kind of been there, or has long been there. This is so hard to parse, but I now have a new understanding of this because there were 3 reorg bits that we got that came out of this. There's a new team that's going to build silicon systems and devices that span multiple products: Windows, cloud, client, AI world, right? Great. This is led by someone no one's ever heard of, Pavan Davuluri. I've asked multiple people, insiders, not like employees. I mean, obviously he's known inside Microsoft. I've never heard of this person. No one has. That team is doing this. So this is like this is the AI problem. AI spans everything. The Copilot thing they just announced, we'll talk about, spans everything. You can't put them in Windows. You can't put them in devices. You can't put them, this is like this is requiring a reorg or rethinking of how Microsoft is organized, right? So forget the pronouncements they made about our commitment to Surface and MR remains unchanged. They said that about Windows Phone in 2015. That's nonsense. Then there is this other team that's going to report to someone I've never heard of that is made up of people I've never heard of. That will, it's new. It's a Windows and web experiences team. Their teams will remain intact. I don't know what teams. What do you mean? And these guys are going to blend web service and Windows for an AI world. And I think this is going to be the stuff we saw at the show. The AI stuff in Paint, the AI stuff in Photos, the is sort of AI stuff in Snipping Tool, et cetera, et cetera. Right? I think that's what they're doing. They're what used to be like the Joe Belfiore stuff, right? You may remember the name of it, but whatever that little team was called, like something experiences, right? And then there's this line that makes it sound like Yusuf Mehdi is in charge of Windows. It says Yusuf Mehdi will take on the responsibility of leading the Windows and Surface businesses. That sounds like he's leading those businesses, right? It's very clear cut. But it says with our OEM and retail partners. So here's the answer. We got this yesterday. Mary Jo apparently got this right on the first shot. I think she was the only one in the whole world. Yusuf Mehdi is not in charge of Windows. That's just to speak clearly. In fact, go back and watch yesterday's thing. Yusuf Mehdi came out and said, here's my boss, or here's the guy who's running Surface and Windows, and then introduced whoever that guy was. I have to go back and watch it. I don't even remember who it was. And then we saw that. We're like, yep, there it is. But we talked to people, and he's not running Windows or Surface. He is basically marketing. And I think that's what the OEM and retail partner thinks. In other words, he's what Mike Angiulo used to be, if you remember him. He's the guy inside of Windows and Surface, I guess now, who is interacting with their partners. The interaction of Surface with their partners, well, I guess Surface interacts with retail partners.
Yeah.
Right. But the OEMs are PC makers. So that's Windows and PC makers. That's Mike Angelo. So, 15 years ago was. So this is very confusing. There's a lot of questions here, but basically my understanding is more personal computing. I got to look it up. I'm sorry. The guy, there's under that is Experiences and Devices Group.
Mm-hmm.
That's Rajesh. Under that, new team building silicon systems and devices that span Windows and other things. That's led by this guy. I've never heard of Pavan Devaluri, whatever. Under that are two teams. There are people that build experiences that blend web services and Windows, right? Those are the experiences things,
mm-hmm.
and then Windows. I think Windows is way down in there, and then also the part of use of Mehdi doing the marketing part of Windows. Will Windows ever be on the SLT again? You know what? We could make a pretty good case no. At this point, I really feel like it's that diminished. Windows is so important, and yet Windows is only one plug in this whole system. And by the way, what I just said is not a fact. I want to be clear about this. I'm just kind of there's an evolving understanding of what happened here. So I guess we should, to conclude the Panos Panay thing, pushed or jumped because of this, because of that. We don't know.
Could be somewhere, like most things, the truth somewhere is like maybe he was thinking about leaving and then all this stuff happened. He's like, I'm out.
I think he is super career centric and always pushing forward. I think the Apple thing and this Amazon thing were both about him trying to leverage himself and either get ahead either way. Like I will go to those companies or I will get ahead here. Do I believe that this guy was pissed off about bad things? Yep. I mean, 100%. I'm sure that might have been part of it.
Or maybe this reorg was coming either way, right?
That's what I mean. No, that's what I meant up front. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I do believe. And he would be diminished because Windows would be diminished.
Right.
And so Windows and Surface are on the same level.
Yep.
So now they've gone down a level or two. And I think he was like, no. And you know what? I bet they would have said, and sorry, because of where you are now in the company, you're not on the SLT. You're not high enough up. And I think he was like, no, that would look like a demotion, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that might have played a role. I think that is plausible to me. That again, it's not a fact.
So here's something else to keep in the back of your hat. I was gonna say your feather. I don't whatever. So Surface, right? What's happening with Surface? Here's what I think we need to all really be watching for.
Mm-hmm.
Where do Rolf and Stevie end up? Because they are the heart and soul of Windows of Surface.
Do you not know the answer? Because I know the answer.
I do not. Well, I mean, I know they got moved around different teams.
No,
but I
know the exact answer. I know exactly where they're going to be. So that team that's going to build silicon systems and devices, right? The one that's going to be under Rajesh, which is part of more personal. I think that whole business unit thing is going to be screwed up. I think the Microsoft as organized today will not be like this within a year. So right now we're trying to put them in some level, but they are both very specifically part of that team.
Yeah. Well, I'm more meaning like, do they leave?
Leave the company?
Yeah.
We'll see. I got to tell you, Stevie Batish was the single shining star build 2023, and I want to see that guy. He needs to be on stage.
He's fantastic on multiple levels.
Yep. He is actually to Surface what Phil Spencer is to Xbox. And I mean that on multiple levels. Well-spoken, plain-spoken, honest, forthright, tech knows what he's talking about. A lot of things I didn't get out of certain people there. I'm just not to be a jerk about it. But apparently their teams remain intact. Now, their teams, and this was a longer list of people. You might know some of them. I don't recognize almost any of these names. But Stevie and Ralph, at least, were part of that Surface team. A specific part of it. And it probably, honestly, under Panos Panay and Windows, became a different team that spanned, it did, actually, right? It's a different team that spans hardware and software.
Mm-hmm.
Hardware and services, whatever you want to call it. That team, whatever that team is called, and maybe there are other people in this list, their teams remain intact, but now they're part of this broader thing, and I think they have this directive, which they sort of had before, right? Integrate AI features into your stuff. That's what Windows Studio Effect was, right? I'm sure that came out of that group, right? So yeah, do they stay? I mean, obviously I can't answer that. I hope to God they do. Those guys are both amazing and deserve more of the credit for what Surface accomplished, I think, than certain other people. There's some questions about whether Panos will fit into the Amazon system. I don't know if we're not as privy to this over on our side of the world, but I know a lot of people there too because they used to be at Microsoft, and I got to tell you, I have heard from 2 people that have basically said he's going to get eaten up and spitting out. You know?
So you can add a third, because I've heard from you can add 3 more people. Because as soon as this news broke, I heard from people I haven't heard from in a while. But,
exactly.
I mean, it's like we all know how big this is, and they're all like, going to Amazon?
I know.
Like,
I don't think he has a lot of choices. Think about what his perceived accomplishments are. What are the companies building devices that are modern and interesting and technology related? I mean, the only other, he would end up at a sneaker company, or something like that, something that's outside of our world, which frankly,
I thought he was going to end up at Sonos because he was on the board. I don't know if he's still on the board.
Yeah, remember? He is, and this is actually going to be a problem for him. So if he does go to Amazon, that has to be rectified because those guys are partners, but they're also explicitly competitors, like Sonos in their 10Q that identified Amazon as actually I think their biggest competitor. So yeah, that will have to change, but that's okay. People leave boards, that's fine. We'll see. So that's one of the 3 things, Brad. We only got through it. This is
maybe I get through all of it.
I know it's a lot.
To keep the show moving, because we don't have, I have lunch plans.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep in mind, people, we start recording this at 9.
Yeah. Exactly.
There was a snafu where Microsoft, which we now know, accidentally uploaded basically 18-month roadmap for almost all of Xbox. There's some game stuff missing, but almost all of Xbox.
There was also a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Which is like...
And just laid it all out.
Yep.
And so in a nutshell version, there's 2 new consoles coming. There's the Brooklyn and the I think it's Ellwood. Mm-hmm. The Brooklyn device will be a round version of the Series X, but it has efficiency. It has a smaller die. It's more power efficient. It'll have upgraded Wi-Fi, USB-C, upgraded Bluetooth. They're still targeting the same price point. There will be a new Series S, but it will look exactly the same. Basically, those guts shoved inside. $299, both launching next year. There's a new controller that slots in between the one that ships with the console and the Elite that will connect directly to the web. It'll also have improved Bluetooth and direct connectivity to the console. So it's like Xbox Play Anywhere, but a controller.
And by the way, who wrote the article 18 months ago that Microsoft needed to make this controller? Because Stadia it was dying and it was the greatest idea they ever had. Can you think who it was? Anyway. Yep.
So all this stuff is coming. There's a new console targeted for 2028.
Mm-hmm.
Like
next year. I know. By the way, what's the blockbuster news there, Brad? Did you get to see these documents? Because I will be writing about this for the next week. There's so much information.
Well, I need to go through the rest of it, but then that's not even all the Xbox news of the week.
But unless something changed, and it could have, because this document was not quite a year old. They were looking at going ARM. For the processor. It would be co-designed with AMD or built by AMD. There's obviously all this stuff inertia with x64, and does this even make sense? But they're looking out at 2028, and they have this. They at the time had this belief like this is our focus, and we'll see. We don't actually know, right? That could have changed, but that's what they were looking at. And there's some good Windows stuff in there because Panos Panay at the time was telling them, hey, we get this WinX thing, which I believe was actually Windows 10X, by the way, a lightweight version of the operating system that would also make sense for the console and has an architecture similar to the last 2 generations of consoles, meaning Hyper-V based, right? It was containers in Windows 10X, but essentially the same kind of thing where you have different environments running side by side. It actually, if you think about WinX, if you know anything about Windows or Xbox One and the new consoles, it literally is this kind of like there's 3 parts to it. There's a little light thing that boots the system. There's the big chunk that runs the game. And then there's the little chunk that runs the apps, and these things all can run side by side and hand off different things to each other. And that was kind of Windows 10X, by the way. Like it's actually kind of fascinating. So anyway, there's a lot going on there. There's so many. They wanted to buy Nintendo.
Yeah.
Chris Capasella jumped into a conversation. Was like, I support this 100%. Let's make sure we're looking at this. The guy, I think it was Phil Spencer, said I just talked to whoever from Nintendo, and this is the one company we could possibly we're like the only company in the business that could possibly make this happen.
Yep. And I suspect that those narratives fell apart, or that process did, and that's why they ended up with Activision.
So yes, and you're right in the sense that they were actually at that time they were looking at all kinds of different things. They hadn't yet bought ZeniMax.
Yep.
And Chris Capasella, I think it might have been Phil Spencer or Chris, but said to whatever the group this was, look, we can't say everything that we told the board, but let's just say that there are three big companies in this space that we're absolutely looking at, and that there have already been published rumors that two of them were EA and not Tencent. ZeniMax was one. So they did buy ZeniMax, and then I think the third one was Activision Blizzard, right? I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating. There's too much going on for me to. I was going to write one article about this, and then I realized, oh my God,
there's like 50.
It's like everything.
There's the whole thing in there too about Phil Spencer. Now it got misconstrued a bit, where people are like, "Oh, Microsoft's going to exit the gaming business because Phil Spencer wrote like, if we don't hit these numbers, we'll exit." But it was based off of a chart that was given to him by another team that wasn't actually reflective of the growth they're expecting with Activision.
This is I'm literally just the way I decided to write this, and I'm not gonna get everything in every article, unfortunately, because it's too much. It was like I started to realize I have to look at themes, and then apply information from various documents to the themes, and then write the one thing. And one of them is the financials. I haven't found an explicit thing, but there are multiple references to this guy Phil Spencer saying, the board has made it painfully clear about our problems with profits and revenues, and we obviously need to address that. And I think this speaks to that thing I've been saying for a long time, which is this business is not profitable. It's never been profitable. And I think this big bet they're making right now is the, I don't know, Hail Mary or whatever, to kind of turn that around. Or maybe maybe that's not even fair. Maybe pragmatically speaking, you could look at this and say, given the way the world's going, console sales, they expect by 2030 will be a smaller percentage of their business than they are today. They are today a smaller percentage than they were in 2015, by the way, which is crazy. Bigger chunk will be software services, obviously, and subscriptions, big part of that, right? I think they're just saying, look, the market's changing. If we ride this right, we're going to come out on the other side in better shape. It's fascinating.
Well, you can't spend $70 billion and not have substantial growth to the business. Like that is just a non-option inside of any business.
Yep.
So
it's great. It's crazy. I mean, it's just so much. It's hard to. I realize the tidal wave nature of this. This we talked about this being the biggest news week. I was trying to think back. In terms of leaks, is this one of the biggest things ever? The one leak that I was uniquely privy to it came during an internal show Microsoft had called Envision, and it was in the Longhorn days. And for me, that was like the biggest thing in the world. There was the Surface 2 stuff that you and I were both involved in. The NT source code leak back in the day or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying like the biggest leak. Like I think this is the biggest leak in the history of Microsoft.
Yeah, because it's all first party. Like
yes,
they can't come out and say these documents aren't real. Like
no, it's all very clearly real.
Yeah,
and it is immense. It's unbelievable how much information is in there. I'm going to spend a big chunk of the weekend going through this. There's so much more in there.
And then
huge.
If that wasn't enough, then there was this event yesterday that Paul went to where there wasn't much. It was kind of a lackluster event, in my opinion, because
But that okay. So we'll talk about that. But yeah. So let's just this is the framing of this is that going into this event, it was rumored to be, and then they had sent out invites which were very vague, and everyone's like, oh, they're having a Surface event, and I was right up front. I was like, no, this can't be a Surface event, and I don't mean like they're not going to announce Surface stuff. It is that time of year, but rather this can't be it. Like it can't be it. And then a couple of days later, they sent out a new invite. And this one very specifically said AI across whatever products. And Surface was on the list, but it was the last thing on the list. And I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. Because they have all this AI stuff that I would call client AI stuff. Not because it runs on the client, but because it's consumer individual stuff. So like end user stuff, like Bing and Edge and the Bing chat stuff that's in those products. Microsoft 365, we know about all the Copilot stuff across all the apps, the main apps. And then all the working against the Microsoft Graph and all that crap. Windows with the Windows Copilot, and then these hints of other apps that are going to have AI stuff, Paint, Photos, Snipping Tool, whatever. Yep. Oh, and then Surface. And the only thing Surface could provide in this story is MPUs, right? And I had heard very explicitly from a good source that every Surface device they will be selling at one point everyone will have MPUs. That's the goal. We're going to go MPU. Yeah. The question was whether that was going to happen this year. The answer now, of course, is no. And of course it's no, because Jesus. And on the morning of the event, there was a big Surface rumor around the Panos Panay stuff, and part of it is they just shit-canned all of their non-essential products, which is most of them, to be honest. Surface will be the tablet, the Pro and things that look like Pro, the laptop and things that look like laptop, and that's it. Well, no, and then of course they still have Surface Hub and but it's the basics. And honestly, come on, I love Surface, I really do. But let's be honest. I mean, this business makes no sense, and there's a good chance, Brad, that this is the first step toward what they did to Windows Phone, because at one point with Windows Phone they were like, oh no, we're still going to come out with more phones, but we're going to be more focused and blah blah blah. And they did the 950 or whatever, and the 950 XL, and that was it, right? And even that was just, it was just in the pipeline. It was easy. They threw it out, and they didn't care, and no one bought them anyway. Who cares? I would say there's a really good chance that's where Surface is right now. Like in fact, if you believe that Panos left because of something, it might be like, hey, we're going to wind this business down. I mean, I could see it. You do that calculus. It's the awful math of Windows Phone, and Satya Nadella very quickly said nope. So we'll see. But I mean, I'm just speculating on that. But I would have serious worries about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I get where you're coming from, because it's like we've seen this pattern before. I think they would have a harder time winding down Surface only because of the brand recognition. Like, they wouldn't want to give that up. But we already know they're contracting what they're like. Even look what they are shipping here. It's only really one version of an Intel chip for the laptop. Right. It's only one version of the chip for the.
Well, even that, by the way, that's fascinating in itself, right? So obviously you want to have an NPU in your flagship device. Yeah. Unfortunately, where we are in the timeline with things is that means you switch from Intel and go to the 1A AMD chipset that came out last May that has that thing integrated. Can't go Qualcomm, that has it.
Right.
So what do we do with Intel? Well, this is what they did with Intel. It's a previous gen mobile 13th gen chipset, but the NPU is on there. It's separate. It's a separate part, right? And this is this might be the only 13th gen mobile chipset based device that has this. I don't believe there is another computer like this in the world. We know with the 13th gen, you could get that add-on. No one ever did it on mobile. No one ever did it on desktop either, but it's there if you want it. No one's done it. So Meteor Lake's coming. This is 14th gen, desktop first, mobile, CES. Next year will be the year for all these other devices to go. And I think that's why we didn't see Pro and laptop.
I think I could buy that argument.
I think that's why. But they had to have something. So let's go with the flagship, you know. The fact that they released two other little piece of crap computers without NPUs at an AI event is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like a complete waste of time.
Here's what makes no sense to me. That Surface Laptop Go 3 at $799 is a targeted back-to-school special, which the market that they just completely missed.
I was going to say, what do you mean? Okay, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
It would have made sense to launch that thing in June. Yeah. Because it doesn't have AI. Who cares?
I know. It's unbelievable.
It's not like it's needing a new chip. They're waiting for it. Like that chip was available.
So, look, I will admit, and I think the other good chance for Surface is, at least for some kind of short term or some number of years, is just looking at computers. Forget about the Surface Hub, which is its own kind of weird thing. Surface maybe goes forward with like I guess, what is it, 5 product lines? The ones that sort of sell the best or whatever.
Right.
We'll see. But I'm telling you, man, if you see something in the next year that's like, well, you won't see it because they'll never discontinue anything. But if we're sitting here a year from now and they never updated laptop, right, or never updated one of the other ones or whatever, there's your news, right? It's that cutting back is understandable. On a non-profitable business, blah blah blah, whatever. But is there a version of this where Surface is a little more what's the word? Focused?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, we're gonna find out.
So we are gonna find out.
Yeah. But Surface, I mean, honestly, is the smallest freaking province in the entire empire. Like, why do we care about this? The big thing is this AI stuff, right? Yep. And what changed between build and today? I didn't get the explicit support for plugins from third parties. I was hoping we're going to get a list of companies, whatever. There are a couple in there, but what we did get, I think, honestly, and this I wasn't worth traveling to New York for, but the fact that they came out of the gate in February with Bing Chat. They didn't call it a Copilot. It is now very explicitly a Copilot. Stevie Batiste said that in May, by the way, even though it has a different brand. They introduced between March and May of this year 11, 15 Copilot brands. I don't know. GitHub was the first. That was a couple of years ago, but it's the right brand. And then they actually rebranded again, right? The theory here was we were going to have a Microsoft 365 Copilot, the Bing thing, the Windows thing, and they would share an open plugin model that third parties and Microsoft could plug into. And they do, but they said, but we're going to call that thing Microsoft Copilot, or just Copilot, right? But Microsoft Copilot. The Microsoft Copilot will be the common core to each of those things. And you know what? Yes, this sounds like a small thing, but the dumbest thing Microsoft ever did this year on the client side. That's a strong statement. One of the dumbest things that Microsoft did this year on the client side, it's in the top 5 for sure, was putting that freaking big blue Bing icon.
Yeah.
And that's a follow-up to actually what I think was the stupidest thing they did this year, which was lead with Bing. I think Microsoft underestimated how bad Bing is as a brand. And the one thing that this fixes, I know this sounds like a little thing, but Bing Chat, by being an Edge and now being Copilot, powered by Bing, really smart. You put a colorful, nice logo there, not the Bing thing everyone hates and doesn't care about. And now we're talking. Like now, this seems more interesting. I think the Bing brand gets further de-emphasized. I think this was a slap to the face. The 6 months went by and they have 0 new users because no one's sticking around.
I think that's it.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly it. Is they ran this as Bing.
I predicted this. Everyone did.
It wasn't hard. I mean,
how did they not know this? Yes, so that's a big chunk of it, right? I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a big announcement, but honestly,
it is.
They pivoted on brand and strategy in a span of a few months, and they came out public with it.
Yeah,
and then they were like, "Well, we're changing it," And I give them credit for that because a lot of times Microsoft they would have just ran with it. The last time they did this was Windows.NET everything. Remember, it was going to be like Windows.NET Server, Office.NET. They did that then too. But not as quickly. I mean, but within a year or two, it all kind of came apart. This is the quickest turnaround I've ever seen. It beautiful because it's the right decision. Everyone knows this. Copilot is a great brand. It's so apt. It's perfect. It's inspired. Bing, oh God, it's flush it down the toilet and be done with it. Nobody likes it. I don't mean literally nobody. Seriously, if you like Bing, shut up. I don't care.
Jesus. We made it so far without offending
I really don't.
Somebody.
You're just noise.
I get it.
That's you need to like if you like things like Surface like I do, or you like things like Bing, which God help you, or whatever it is, pick your stupid little thing like we all have them. You at least acknowledge that nobody else does, and just be quiet about it. It's just you're not part of the majority. It doesn't matter. These things honestly should go away, and I say that logically, not emotionally. I'm like, I don't want these things. Well, I don't care about Bing, but I don't want Surface to go away. I like Surface, I don't like the way it came about it, whatever. But I do like those products, right? Bing, who cares? This is bigger. Come on. Microsoft's future is AI. The hell is Bing? It's nothing. It's like this little thing in the corner. Who cares? It's a small part of this. Sorry.
And then wrapping it up with a Friday, because it is Friday after all, this morning, the CMA came out and said pretty much they didn't completely approve the deal, but they said, look, it's going to get approved, and we'll have the answer to you. We have to keep the doors open until October 6th, and we will have a ruling out before October 18th. But as of right now, we are satisfied. If you're not satisfied, please come tell us why. But we are satisfied with the remedies. And
by the way, everyone's satisfied. I mean, when this UK thing happened, I was like, I've been highly critical of this organization. They're terrible. They're not elected, by the way. They're dumb. Their rationale makes no sense. The only people on earth who agreed with them were in the FTC, and they got so embarrassed in court. I love that quote. I always talk about it. The judge who was like, you came up with 1 million pieces of evidence, yada, yada, documents, yada, yada, whatever, and you weren't able to come up with one example proving that your belief that Microsoft will do this thing? No. Sorry. And that, by the way, that's how the rule of law should work. The CMA has exactly the same problem. Microsoft came up with a ridiculous solution to hand control of cloud computing, cloud gaming in the UK to a French company, and whereby they still get paid. And by the way, probably will get paid more now because, Xbox cloud gaming is just a money pit. And so now they're actually going to make money from it. And I'm like, only the UK CMA would be dumb enough to think that this solves any problems. And knowing how stupid they are, they will absolutely agree with it. And I saw this thing this morning. I'm like, yep, they're perfect. God love them. I mean, they're so stupid. So, yeah. Anyway, the best thing for people who play games in the UK is going to be for this to happen. So welcome back to the rest of the world. And Microsoft, it looks like, is going to get Activision Blizzard, which is what should have always happened, right? Even in the darkest days, Brad, right? We talked about this. when it's like, oh boy, this might not happen. I've never changed on this because facts are facts. Objective reality is better than subjective reality. Whatever you want to say, there is no logical or legal reason for this thing to not conclude. You may not like it, but it's what should happen. So, I mean, on that sense, I'm glad it happened. Like I'm Xbox cheerleader. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, logically speaking, this is what should have happened months and months and months ago. Just like the end of this podcast.
That was a long one.